he is doing a couple of things tonight. He's actually having a special book launch for his third book of his trilogy. And I think it's been an amazing accomplishment. I mean, he has spent many nights and days working with editors like my wife and a bunch of other people and family, and so he's worked really hard at it. And he is a high school English teacher who has been inspired to write young adult fantasy through his countless hours of teaching and reading to students. He is an avid follower of all things mythological. When not writing, Brad spends his time in the outdoors, either on his bicycle or motorcycle touring the stunning countryside near his home. Please, warm welcome for Brad Cameron.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I really appreciate everybody being here tonight, and usually I get to have the opportunity of being the MC of these events, and it's kind of fun being the author, being the guy doing the reading. So tonight was, as Ray mentioned, my book launch for book 3, The Gates of Asgard. It's third book in the Zeke Proper Chronicles. Book 1 is Odin's Light, and book 2 is The Serpent Ship. I mentioned this before when I first spoke here. This was a couple of years ago when the Odin's Light came out, and I mentioned the idea. I had an idea going on about how I would present a particular story that I've been thinking about a young boy who goes through some struggles, sort of a hero's quest type of thing. But I just didn't really have a good vehicle, if you will, to be able to take that story. And it wasn't until I started teaching over in the Beaverton School District of the high school, and the English department head at the time, where I was teaching in the English department, came to me and said, "So Brad, we're going to have you teach mythology." And I went, "Okay, great, excellent." And then I went off and I started talking to some of my colleagues and asked them, "So mythology, it's Zeus and things like that, right?" Because I really didn't know anything about mythology. So I jumped into this curriculum of trying to figure out how I was going to teach a bunch of kids about mythology. And of course I followed the idea of the Greek and the Roman mythology, which was fine. Most kids knew about that. But it wasn't until I started investigating into Norse mythology, Odin, Loki, Thor, Freya, the world tree, Yggdrasil, all of the incredible stories that go along with the Norse, Valhalla, and I just sort of fell in love with that idea, and so I thought, this is the vehicle that I'm going to use to be able to tell my story of this young man, Zeke, which Ezekiel, if you know little biblical stuff, Ezekiel, or Zeke, which is his name, is also means light bearer. And you will see at the beginning of the book, as the story unfolds, that Zeke is indeed a light bearer, but he goes through a lot of challenges to finally reach that level of a warrior, of a hero. I'd like to tell you a story tonight from this book, and it's a little fishing story. And it's one of the little adventures that Zeke goes through. This is actually a story, myth that was told that included some other mythological gods and characters, but I rearranged some things and retold it with Zeke in mind. Zeke comes across a dragon in his adventures as he goes into the mist and begins searching along the tree, the Yggdrasil. In Norse mythology, the tree holds the 9 worlds. one of those being Midgard, Asgard, Niflheim, the land of the dead. And as he travels between these worlds, he goes into something called the mist, which is basically, as I describe it, the branches, the limbs, the roots of this giant ash tree, which is part of Norse mythology. His job is to get some gold. And he's come across a dragon by the name of Nidhogg, who's holding some of his friends hostage. And in order to release them, he needs to obtain gold. And so he's told by a seeress where he should go to get it. And so I'm going to kind of just get to that place just very quickly. Zeke holds with him a staff called the Staff of Erd. And he uses this staff as he enters a cave, which I'll just describe here. Hang on one second here, I just got to find the right place. Zeke began to trudge ahead, though without the staff as a crutch, his limp was more pronounced. Nevertheless, he picked his way down a chain of dripping tunnels and through a maze of twilight chambers, finally coming to another massive cavern, as its high roof supported by columns of rock thicker than tree trunks. The corners, however, remained dark and foreboding. The little light that did manage to filter into the middle of the cavern from Zeke's torch and from a vertical shaft in the roof illuminated what Zeke had ventured so far to find, the abode of the dwarf Andvari. In the center of the cavern was a large silent pool filled with water that seemed to spring from nowhere and flow nowhere. Standing at its edge, Zeke reached once again into Sinmora's pouch, retrieving a folded scrap of leather. Inside was a rotted piece of meat Sinmora had collected from the ground near Nidhogg's cave. What kind of meat and where it had come from, Zeke did not want to know. This was the bait that would catch the flesh-loving pike that swam the cold waters in Andvari's clever disguise. Zeke stamped out the flame that continued to burn brightly from the end of the staff and replaced it with a thin line of fishing wire. On the end, he placed a barbed hook, its sharpened end catching the light from the vertical shaft. Then, remembering a brief moment of time almost a year ago, when Taylor tied a fishing lure to the end of one of the captain's fishing rods, Zeke tried to mimic her subtle movements, spinning the line several times and then pushing the end through the tiny loop. Then, using his teeth, pulling it taut until the knot tightened, a well-blended marriage of hook and line. Taking a deep breath, Zeke spun the line around several times like a cattle rancher trying to rope a calf. He cast it swiftly into the depths of the pool. Then he pulled on the line slowly, dragging it through the water with a steady, even motion. Suddenly the line pulled tight. The thin wire cut into Zeke's grip as he struggled to keep it from pulling him and the staff over Erd into the frigid water. Near its center, the smooth pool suddenly exploded as a huge fish leapt into the air, furiously lashing and writhing, its nasty yellow eyes taking one angered glance at Zeke before plunging back into the water. Zeke, his feet wedged between the narrow cleft of two rocks, wrapped the line around his hands while he heaved and pulled, fighting with the great fish until finally landing it on the rugged shore. Its massive tail beat against the rock while its mouth opened and closed in a vain attempt to gulp at the dry air. Zeke stared at the dying fish and for a brief moment felt pity for the suffering animal. But then he remembered what Sinmora had told him. Andvari is a sniveling, spineless little imp who will stop at nothing to get what he wants. He's cruel, and he hoards his gold like the angry miser that he is. Don't be fooled by his supposed helplessness. He isn't helpless at all, Sinmora had said. He'd just as soon cut your throat and watch you bleed to death than give you a morsel of food if you're starving. Zeke freed his mind from his normally giving nature and grabbed the flopping fish by the tail, hanging him upside down, careful not to get too close to the pike's sharp teeth. He shook the fish fiercely. "Change shape!" Zeke yelled. His voice echoed off the cavern walls. The pike stopped its thrashing about and looked up at Zeke with its yellow eyes. A look of confusion seemed to creep into its pupils, expanding them, pushing aside the yellow that filled the outsides. Then suddenly, like a scene from some vivid nightmare, the fish morphed into a tiny man. Zeke fought hard to keep himself from turning and running. Instead, he found himself holding the dwarf by the back of his pants. The little man's arms waved around wildly while his head bumped against the rocks. "What do you want?" whined Andvari. Hearing the poor little man's pathetic cry, Zeke almost let go, but he remained firm to his promise to Sinmora. "What I want," Zeke said, trying to sound confident and mean, "is all your gold. Give it to me, or I'll give you the beating of your life with this staff." Zeke held the staff close to the dwarf's face. He shook it threateningly, though the act itself seemed awkwardly comical. Andvari's eyes widened when he looked closely at the staff. A fearful recognition stretched itself across his features. Zeke expected this kind of reaction. Sinmora had related her own grim experience with the dwarf and how he'd nearly fallen prey to his treachery. Yet it was the staff of Erd that had finally saved her, though she wouldn't say exactly what she'd done with the staff to escape the deceitfulness of this lying little creature. "I'll do whatever it is that you want," Andvari said. His voice wavered with fear. Zeke hesitated for a moment, his grip still strong on the back of his dwarf's pants. "Lead me to your smithy," Zeke ordered, his voice sounding much bolder. "But no tricks. Remember, I have the staff." Okay, I'll just jump a little bit. So Zeke is led to the dwarf's smithy, and yeah, okay, let me just get to this. The dwarf then spread out his arms toward the well-stocked room that showed gold upon gold gleaming in the forge's firelight. "Take whatever it is that you like," Andvari said. "All that you can carry is yours." Zeke stared in wonder at the immense treasure that was laid out before him. Never in his life had he seen anything so wonderful. For a moment, he was hypnotized by the sight, recognizing that this was probably what Nidhogg felt when he stared at his own miserly pile of gold. Just going to skip up here. "Gather it up, dwarf. Put as much as you can in the wagon there, and be quick about it." Andvari pinched his eyebrows together and was about to open his mouth to say something when he glanced once more at the staff. "All right," he said reluctantly, and began scrambling around, cursing and moaning, his sharp words hidden under his breath. Soon Andvari filled the small wagon with a pile of discs and chips and splinters of yellow gold, as well as bars of red gold, of objects already made and of objects half made. Zeke looked at the pile and was very pleased, knowing that Nidhogg would have to be impressed with the contents of the wagon. He was about to congratulate Andvari on a job well done, but he stopped himself. Praising the little man would show weakness. Zeke wanted to remain firm, though the effort to do so was difficult. "Is that all you can get in there?" Zeke said, pounding the staff into the dirt. "It's full, can you not see?" Andvari complained. Though Zeke could see that it was well stocked, he didn't want the dwarf to think him at all satisfied. "I suppose it will do," Zeke said, catching the quick movements of the dwarf's hand as he tried to hide something behind his back. I'm going to tell you what that is. Anyway, so it's been a really fun process putting this story together. Just the lot of the research that I've been able to do, it's kept my mind busy, and I find a lot of joy being able to sit and just do the writing and be creative, and I think that's sometimes what it's all about, just being able to release that creativity and also enjoy the books. Book 1, 2, and 3 are available, and Tina's there ready to take your money. And I'll sign too. So all the signatures for. Thank you very much.